The hospital hallway fluorescent lights hummed overhead. Nurses moved fast but quietly, the way people do when they already know the night was devastating. A stretcher flew past, then another. Tiny shoes, blood on the blanket, a child's hand slipping from the edge, before a nurse gently tucked it back in. Behind them, a woman with bandaged arms, and a story that sounded almost too clean. Someone tried to carjack us. A stranger stepped out of the dark. He wanted the car. He shot the kids first. Her name was Diane Downs. She looked more inconvenienced than destroyed. Doctors focused on the children, 3 of them, all harmed at close range, while sitting in the car, one little girl already gone. The others were clinging to life. A little boy permanently changed in an instant. Their bodies told the truth long before anyone realized that their mother might not be. Detectives were trained to pay attention to details, the wounds, the scene, the words people chose, but sometimes it's not the details that set off alarm bells. Sometimes it was the absence of a human reaction that did it. No frenetic questions, no desperate begging, no collapsing in the hallway. Diane asked about her car. She smiled at one of the officers. Grief did not sit on her face. Performance did. Welcome to GBRLIFE Transmissions. I'm your host, Caitlin, and you're listening to GBRLIFE of Crimes, where we explore not just what happened in crimes committed by women, but why they happened and the psychology behind them. Today, we're stepping into the mind of a woman who turned motherhood into a stage and treated tragedy like a role she was born to play. This is the story of Diane Downs. And to understand a night like that, you have to go back to the beginning. Because women, especially like Diane, do not wake up at 27 or 28 and suddenly decide to live inside a fantasy that ends in gunfire. It starts much smaller and much earlier, with the way a girl first learns what love feels like and what it costs. Diane was born into a world where attention came in pieces, where love did not necessarily mean safety, and where being special meant you had to earn it. Stories about her childhood sit in that complicated space where truth and self-mythology blur. What matters for us is not whether every detail she reported about her upbringing is accurate, but the way she tells it. Diane described herself as misunderstood, unloved, restricted, a girl who wanted more than anyone would ever give her. That sense of deprivation is important because you see it echoed over and over in her relationships. When someone like this becomes an adult, they do not chase stability. They chase intensity. They chase the feeling of being chosen, desired, wanted, above all else, because that is the closest thing they have ever felt to safety. So it's to no surprise that she married young. And it went the way a lot of young marriages do when 2 people are not equipped to handle stress or money or really each other. There were fights. There were affairs and obvious tension. But underneath all of that was something more specific to Diane. She did not just want a partner. She needed an audience. She wanted to be the center of the story, the woman that life revolved around. Children entered the picture. And for many women, pregnancy and motherhood create a deep protective bond. The instinct kicks in. The world rearranges itself around the baby. For Diane, motherhood was more complicated. It gave her something she liked on the surface: attention. People asked about the baby, they checked on her, and they praised her. She could talk about pregnancy or labor and sleepless nights, and people would listen. But babies also require something Diane was not built to give. They need consistent, boring, repetitive care. They needed a mother whose primary concern is their comfort, not her spotlight. That kind of love is quiet. It does not clap. It does not admire you. It does not tell you that you are special as a mom. It just asks that you show up over and over again when no one is watching. With its endless sacrifices and lack of applause, motherhood would never line up with her fantasies. And as the children grew, so did the cracks in her life. Money problems, marital issues, affairs that came and went. And then, as is so often the cases in stories like this, one relationship began to matter more than it should have. A romance that felt like escape. Someone who made her feel lit up inside. Someone who, importantly, did not want the complications of children. In most lives, this is where the fantasy stops. The person chooses reality. They accept that the affair is unsustainable, or that the lover does not want kids, so this is not their forever person. They may grieve and move on, but typically, they keep going back to packing lunches and wiping counters and doing homework at the kitchen table. Back to the office if they also worked. Either way, Diane was not that person. She did not want to move on, and she wanted this time the fantasy to win. So she started to talk. Not always directly, but in little ways. Joking comments about how hard it is to be a mother, how much simpler life would be without the chaos. An offhand remark here, a complaint there, a subtle testing of the idea that the kids were the problem. Obstacles standing between her and the life she believed she deserved. That's where the psychology becomes dangerous. For someone like Diane, the kids were not their own separate human beings with their own inner worlds. They were extensions of her. Proof that she could attract a man, build a family, play the role. But when that role stopped feeding her, they became just reminders of everything she was stuck in, every sacrifice that she never wanted to make. So fast forward, back to that night. A small dark road, the children in a car, and a story that would later be told in a cold, almost rehearsed tone. She said she pulled over to look at the magazine someone had left her. A stranger appeared, demanded the car. She refused. He shot the children, but then he shot her in the arm. Somehow, she managed to live and drive, wounded, with 3 kids bleeding in the back, all the way to the hospital. But the evidence had its own voice. The children were shot at close range. The location of the injuries did not line up with a chaotic struggle with a stranger, and her wound was clearly to a non-fatal area. And compared to what her children suffered, basically it was superficial. There were questions about how long it actually took her to drive to the hospital, too. Given the distance and the time frame, there were inconsistencies about what she said that night and what she said later. And then there was her behavior. In interviews, she smiled, she laughed, she even flirted. She talked about being shot as if she were the star of a dramatic scene. She described the bullets tearing through her arm with a strange pride, like this proved she was a survivor. But when she talked about her children, it was oddly detached. There was no rawness, there was no breakdown, there was no struggle, not even to get through a sentence. Just smooth words and practiced phrases. Diane was not acting like a grieving mother. She was acting like someone auditioning to play one, and not even very well. Detectives noticed. Prosecutors noticed. But viewers at home noticed too. When they saw footage of her interviews that had made their way onto television, that disconnect between her role and her reality is part of what made this case unforgettable. And yet the most important voices in this story did not come from the adults. They came from the children who survived. One of Diane's daughters, one strong enough and safe enough, told a very different story than her mother did. A story in which there was no stranger, no carjacker, and no mysterious man appearing out of nowhere in a dark road. A story in which the person holding the gun was the same person who was supposed to protect them. Imagine for a moment what it means for a child to say out loud, to look at the adults in the room and tell them that their mother was the one who pulled the trigger. Children in abusive or chaotic environments often still cling to their parents as the definition of love. It is not easy to break that spell. And the fact that she did speaks volumes, because it was the ultimate betrayal. And in the courtroom, Diane kept up the performance. She styled herself, presented herself, made jokes, and tried to charm. She seemed to believe that if she could just sell her version of events, if she could just stay captivating enough, someone would choose her story over the evidence. She was just not defending herself from a legal conviction. She was defending herself of her fantasy, of who she believed she was. She was a good mother, a devoted woman, and the real victim. Of course, the jury did not buy it, and she was convicted and sentenced to life in prison. And yet, even that did not end the narrative that she built for herself. Years later, she would continue to do interviews. She would talk about conspiracies and unfairness and how nobody understood her. She clung to that identity. Diane, the misunderstood, wrongly accused mother. And this is where we step back and look at the psychology. Diane Downs is often labeled as narcissistic. And that word gets thrown around a lot, especially towards women. But here, it serves a very specific purpose. A narcissistic parent does not see their children as separate people with their own rights and needs. They see them as supporting characters, props, that reflect back either how special they are or how trapped they feel. When the children made her look good, she could play the role of loving mother, photos, stories, the internal image of a woman doing it all. But when the kids became obstacles to that fantasy, especially for a man who did not want them, and when they interrupted the love story that she had written in her mind, well, they're disposable to that fantasy. And it's important to say this clearly. Most mothers who feel overwhelmed, resentful, or trapped do not hurt their children. Those feelings can be common, and they're usually a sign of stress or lack of support. Sometimes it's mental health struggles or societal pressure, but not a sign of murderous intent. So what makes Diane different is the way she resolved that internal tension. Instead of seeking help or creating boundaries or accepting loss, she chose an option that allowed her to keep the fantasy and remove the barrier. In her story, she could still be the hero, the woman so in love and so devoted, and so wounded by life that tragedy followed her. The fact that she was the author of that tragedy did not fit the script, so she took that part out. In her mind, she really might see herself as the victim. Most narcissists do. They see they hurt you. They know what they do to you, but they deny any of your feelings, and they take on what you feel as their own because they are the victim in every situation. It doesn't matter how many times they hurt you, they're the victim. And we also have to look at how society responded, because cases like this touch a nerve that runs much deeper than any one woman. There is a cultural belief that mothers are inherently nurturing, that the bond between mother and child is sacred and almost automatic. When a woman betrays that expectation, the reaction is intense. People feel personally offended because it's not just horror, it's outrage. How could she? What kind of mother does that at all? Why have children at all? And these questions show up every time a woman harms her kids, and they reveal something uncomfortable about us too. We expect mothers to be selfless, endlessly giving, emotionally regulated. We do not extend that same demand to fathers in the same way. Other kills, it feels like someone has broken an unspoken contract. Diane's case became a lightning rod for those feelings. She seemed to embody the worst possible version of a bad mother, not just abusive, not just neglectful, but willing to kill for a man who did not want her kids. Her smiling interviews only poured gasoline on that fire. But if we stay in that outrage, we miss what is actually valuable about studying a case like this. Because under the performance and the evil of what she did, there are patterns worth paying attention to. Patterns of women who feel unseen and try to become unforgettable at any cost. Patterns of mothers who use their kids for validation instead of connection. Patterns of people who twist victimhood into a personality trait and live so deeply in their own self-pity that empathy for others simply does not exist. Diane Downs is an extreme version of all of this, but she is not one of a kind. There are other women and men who live in similar fantasy structures. Most will never pick up a weapon, and many still leave emotional wreckage behind them. Partners who are drained. Children who grow up confused about what love is supposed to feel like. Families who keep trying to fix someone who does not believe they have anything to fix, or they just don't talk about it and pretend like that type of relationship and that type of love is normal. But it's not, because it's not love at all. And when we talk about dangerous women on this podcast, we're not just listing crimes. We're trying to understand the belief systems that make those crimes possible. And with Diane, that belief system seems to orbit a single point. She was the main character, and everything and everyone else is negotiable. Her children were not negotiable. They were human beings. And that is why this story still haunts people. Because somewhere out there are the survivors of that night. People who had to rebuild a life after realizing that the person they should have been safest with was the one who hurt them the most. And their story is not about fantasy. It's about resilience, and it deserves more space than people like her, than mothers like that. This has been GBRLIFE of Crimes, part of GBRLIFE Transmissions, and I'm Caitlin, reminding you that understanding the darkness helps us appreciate the light. Join me next time as we uncover another case that challenges everything we thought we knew about the criminal mind.